So our today's keynote speaker is Tamela Milan-Alexander to discuss her insights and recommendations for how our systems can better serve children and families. As I shared, Tamela is on the LCFS Board of Trustees, so she is one of my bosses. So please be nice to her. Tamela has worked for 20 plus years as a parent advocate, peer educator, developmental screener, community health worker, and case manager. Currently, she serves as the Director of Community Engagement at EverThrive, Illinois. She is also the founder of Bridges to Bond, a Chicago area organization that offers strategies to bridge providers in service and policy in engaging with the community for collaborative health equity solutions. Because that one thing COVID showed us is, as we all know, there's a lot of inequity in our society, and that exists also within health. And I think that health and protective factors for families intermix significantly, particularly access to resources. Anyway, in addition, Tamela has served on numerous boards of directors, including LCFS, Health Connect One, the American Academy of Pediatrics Family and Partnerships Network, and the National Healthy Start Association. Tamela has also become a national speaker, sharing her inspiring journey of having been on both sides of the fence, quote unquote. So we're very honored to have her today. So Tamela, thank you so much for being here. And welcome here.
I'm so nervous. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me. I'm not going to get too close to this because I can be pretty animated, as they like to say. But thank you so much for taking some time to spend with us here. I always try to start off by telling people where I've been so they can understand where I am today. And so I'm going to take you on a little journey with me into my past so you can see why I stand here so remarkably today. Next slide, please. Okay. So the objective today is for me to just share my personal story. It's my story and I own it. But how systems can decrease harm. Mike talked a lot about changing the narrative. And that's what I heard when he was speaking. And how do we do that? And how did changing that narrative impact me when I first came into the system? And how respectful support and encouragement make a difference instead of disrespectful care. And then just the importance of building trust and working collaboratively with families in the community. So as I go back to the 6P days, who love the Bulls? Who remember Jordan? 6P, yeah. But just a little place beyond there was what I used to call home, which was the Henry Horner homes, or as we affectionately called it, the projects. So the Hornets was where I was. I lived there with, at that time, 4 children. I was in a domestic violence relationship with my husband at that time, because at that time, that was what was considered affordable housing. It's the best place you can get when you are low income, lack many resources or empowerment opportunities. Big words in a really big setting, but there were no places to really go to school and learn about how to, do things better. We were just happy to be able to get out the building safely. And it was easier to buy a $5 bag of heroin than it was to get a loaf of bread or lettuce or tomato for a sandwich. And so I joined the life of a drug addict. It was my new norm when I left mom and dad's house. Next slide, please. While on this journey, while using heroin and cocaine, this became my regular. As soon as my foot hit the floor in the morning, it was off to the races. Now, did I wake up one day and say, this is the day I'm going to become a drug-induced heroin addict? Nobody does that. But just as Mike was saying, you go over there after a certain amount of time, you don't have to ask, you know to go over there and do her driveway. It's something about being infected by what's going on in your community that can make such a difference on what happens to you. Because one of the things I would hear all the time, especially now I was having children, and you know how those nurses and those doctors would look at me, because I was I'm not going to prenatal care. I'm not doing none of that. I'm in and out. Whoop, whoop. I had my baby. They're not going to catch up with me. I'm going back to the projects because they're not coming to follow up. They're not coming to follow up. But most people say, if you use drugs, you don't love your kids. It was not that for me. I did not love myself. I was struggling with an addiction that had taken hold of me, and everything I saw around me was in that same trench with me. I can remember so vividly the day that would transform my journey forever. You see, one of those days living in the Hornets, I was on my way like any other day. I told you, soon as my foot hit the floor, I gotta go get it because the sickness is what drove it. I didn't want to be dope sick, as they referred to it. I didn't want my stomach twisting and turning and my mind not being quieted. I needed to go out. I needed to go get my fix, my blow. And during this time, as I came out the building, the projects were a violent place. And there were no one pouring dollars into community investments. There was high poverty, high crime. But on this particular day, I was on my way to the next building, and then a gunfire. And all I could hear is pow, 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 pow. And as I need to get my fix. So I'm just gravitating to the ground. I move quickly to protect myself from the gunfire. It's coming from behind me. It's coming from in front of me. I see a tire. I'm thinking to myself, bullets bounce off rubber, right? I pray that's the case. But that was my logic. And as I ran to keep myself from being shot, I fell behind this tire. And all of a sudden, the car took off. And my coat caught underneath the car and took me with it. So I was dragged several blocks. And as the car turned the corner under the Lake Street L, I can remember the tire rubbing against my face, my cheeks. But let me tell you how God's mercy and grace is. Because the neighborhood wino, she always stood at that store because the only place to go get regular food at was you can buy liquor, gym shoes, and cigarettes in the same place. But she stopped the car because she seen my foot by the back tire. And when that car stopped, I knew I was broken, beaten, battered, and by the way, pregnant too, with baby number 5. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. But that's my family at the time. I look in her eyes and I see how lost this young woman was. I thought I had left my parents' house and went to live on my own in the projects. I was gonna make it happen. No matter what community I was in, I was gonna make it work. I was with the father of my children. I wasn't out there bad like that. But I had blew my nasal system out. I've been dragged underneath a car. I had no hope. Even when other people kept praying for me, I kept saying, what is y'all talking about? No one cares for me. no one cares for my situation. You may care for my children, but you don't care for me. Next slide, please. At some point, I figured out that maybe I should get on methadone. I was tired of being sick and tired of being sick and tired. But I got on the methadone program, and at some point after I've been dragged and I was trying to get myself together, it was quite natural that all 5 of those children were removed from my custody. And it wasn't just traumatic for my kids, it was traumatic for all involved. Now, I was blessed to have my parents get my kids. And my parents took in 5 kids with my siblings in the house. We still joke about it today. And it's not fun. It's not joke. All right. But what happened is, I'm a smart girl, as you can see. I got pregnant with baby number 6. And people say, are you nuts? You got 5 children that have been taken out your custody. These people got you taking drops every day. But there wasn't a lot of other supportive services. Listen clearly to me. I was taking drops. I would go to my methadone program and get, I did so well because I didn't drop dirty. They just let me bring them all home with me. I just carried them all like this. They was my babies. I didn't even have to go in there like that. Not come and talk to us about the trauma you've been through. Not having time to assess what I want to do next in my life. I got none of that during that time. But while pregnant with baby number 6, you know what they were ready to do. How many of you want to guess? They were ready to remove this baby from my care. Now, I remember clearly, and I don't remember a lot of my pregnancies, unfortunately, but this one was special. Because I can remember her little feet going across my stomach, and I could remember just thinking, wow. They brought my apartment down. I went from a 3-bedroom to a 2. I was working at Church's Chicken, and I was buying little clothes, little outfits, and I was just ready. And I remember going into labor. And I went to University of Illinois, Chicago. My mom had worked there. So I wanted to have a support person in the place. And even though I had been not using illicit drugs, I hadn't been on heroin or cocaine, I was just taking the methadone, I was still faced with the very plausibility that my baby would be removed from my care. And when I tell you today, I would not be here because it would have broken me in ways in which you would never be able to understand, because I wanted to change. I wanted to do better. And please don't do me like this. But what would happen that day, because I had not been dropping dirty and because I was going to the program, instead of DCFS coming to remove my child, a representative from LCFS walked through that door and would change the trajectory of my life forever. It is not easy to look at somebody and say, I put your trust in you. If you say you can help me, then help me. But please don't hurt me. And so I was given a chance, and they said, if you sign A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, where do I sign? I was ready to sign I could have gave up an arm for her, because that's what mattered to me at that time. Next slide. Because, whenever I show up like this, right? This is the file. It should say patient 0. I don't know how I got it. I'm learning. I have 5 children with the DCFS, under DCFS custody, 6 pregnancies, 4 with mother with opioid use disorder, 2 with neonatal abstinence syndrome, which is withdrawal for people who don't know. I was a public housing resident with domestic violence. I've been dragged under a car, so I got PTSD. I was unresponsive to them to obtaining children back, non-compliant to moving out of public housing, unemployed, yet highly motivated to change. Do you see how one narrative and another narrative, and they weren't clicking together? They weren't clicking together. Because all I wanted was, if you looked at my history, talk to me before you make the assumption. And those are my kids all grown up. You see them? They're terrible now. All right, next slide, please. See, to me, I hear this word in my work today, and so I'll follow up with this. Through my time through LCFS and working with their case manager, not only was I able to keep my baby in my care so that we can be together while we do this work. While I worked on me, I still had my baby with me, my muse, my sense of inspiration, the light of my life. While also working to get the other kids back, because she fueled that too. I could have been like, oh, my baby cool, she with my parents. But it meant something to me to get them back. It meant something to my kids when they saw me. I could have brought them a blow-up balloon. They didn't care long as they saw me. And I don't even think I had recognized it for so long. And so working with LCFS, they had me thinking about, what do I want to do with my life? Do I want to go to school? Do I want to have a career? What are the things that I want to achieve? I'm the author of my story. Why am I not taking pen to paper and thinking about what I want to do? And so one of the things they did is say, well, you can go to college. I was like, yeah, right. Not possible. You see my surroundings. I'm looking at the window. I see downtown, but between downtown and here is glasses in the playfield, broken bottles, drug paraphernalia. Ain't nobody going to school. That's crazy talk. Then they said, well, we'll help you fill out the FAFSA. You better, because you know you need a doctoral degree to do that anyway, right? But that's the difference between when somebody's selling you justice and equity. I like this because one of the things that came out of me working under and with and alongside my case manager was my want to give back, right? Because now I got all my kids back, all my kids. I done moved out the projects. I'm in a townhome. I got my Section 8 housing. My first real job, ching, ching. I'm working, went to school, I did all this stuff. But every time I go back and talk to my friends, we still not all looking over the fence. I got a boost because these were like angels to me, the case workers that work with me, because not only did they take in what I wanted to do, they listened. Even if it was a call at 7 p.m. Like, y'all gave me all these kids back. You know I don't know what I'm doing. That's why I say that. This is my joke for the day. Y'all can laugh. Next slide, please. But honestly, they won't get out. But now I've had all these years to work with the programs that worked with me. My pediatrician that put me in contact with the Healthy Start program, and being able to work with Healthy Start to make sure that I was getting those, people start connecting the dots for me. And I'm so grateful because a program that keeps families together should always be the end goal. Instead of giving people handouts, you give people hand up. And now I spent 17 years working with moms and babies because they were like me. They just needed some help. They needed a hand. They needed somebody to give them and help them navigate systems that's not always a clear view. You don't always know what the end goal is for different organizations. Are they showing up in your life? So now I work for EverThrive Illinois. I am the new community engagement director for them. Come on now, hallelujah. Give a shout out to EverThrive Illinois. So right now, well, our mission today is to achieve reproductive justice in the healthcare ecosystem, and it is an ecosystem, right? As you spoke about, all of these things are intersected. All things intersect for the good. And so we do this through our community-driven partnerships, policy actions, and systems change, and our vision, just and affirming healthcare ecosystem where individuals, families, and communities can thrive. I heard you say a lot about child health being. I want us to move to family. Put the word family where child is. Let's start making those connections. That's what we should be doing. And then our values. Once again, reproductive justice, anti-racism, centering the most impacted, bold action and transformation. I found my home at EverThrive. Next slide, please. One of the things that I like to share about the work that I do today, because it was an LCFS case manager who said you need to make sure you put your baby into care. Make sure you're going to those doctor's visits. Know what the risks are, because you're on methadone, you done had this baby. What are the risks to that? You know, nobody had ever said that, and that was my 6th child. So when I had an opportunity to think about, you know, I say this, my mom used to always tell me, you're gonna have a setback. You had all them kids run outside, you're gonna have a setback. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, really? I didn't understand what it was then, but I understand it now, because when I hear it in the community, there's a disconnect between what language we hear and what healthcare is saying, what other different systems of care and social supports are saying to families. So it put the P in passion for me, right? And so I just was so happy that one of my very first things to do over there 1 year ago, yeah, it's been over a year and 1 month, but I was able to work on this, which is called The Gathering, which is built for people that were just like me, who needed some information. Even if my friend had the information, I was better off than have no information at all about the risk and how you support folks who don't have it all and don't have access to the type of resources that we know are lacking in many communities. Next slide, please. And there's just some information on joining The Gathering. Many of your communities need access to this information so that we can start ending when we talk about disparities. When we think about the gap, the biggest gap in some of our work is we're not adding communities' voice to this work. This is plain language. You can take this anywhere and give it to somebody else. No, okay, I'm bleeding too much. My head been hurting for over 3 days. That's not normal. Don't just go take a Tylenol and go lay down like grandma used to tell you to do. We gotta start putting the right information in the hands of folks who need it, because every time we walk into a place, we gotta fight. The system's not set up for us to succeed, not in communities of color in particular. Always got to have your dukes up, as my dad would say. So we have to be more informed. And the way we do that is by working with community. I still do it. I have outreach workers. I pull them right off the west side. Hey, girl, what you doing this week? I need you to help me with this campaign. We want to make sure that Black mothers are not down on the west and south sides without having some good information in their hand. I also continue to work with families. I love these MCH, maternal and child health family councils that EverThrive has. Even before I got there, I was doing this work with them, because I always bring my family, you know, get all the girls together and say, hey, they want to give you this information and they're going to give you a $30 stipend. Gonna be able to go get the kids some diapers, whatever you need. But you get to be your authentic self. Nobody's gonna tell you what to say. You go in, you answer questions based on your lived experience. And no one gets to tell you what to say in those settings. So one of the things that I continue to do today is make sure that there's an opportunity for the families. And you know, I was on the west side of Chicago for a little while with the Health Style program. Now I'm talking about folks all over the state, which is so new to me. But I love it already because there's so many voices that are so unheard and don't know how to leverage their voice, don't know the power of their voice. Next slide, please. Once again, I'd like to say disrespectful care in any setting. I was so happy when that LCFS case manager walked in that room and my stomach was stirring because I thought my baby was gonna be removed from my care. The sickening drop. Everybody, you ever been on the elevator, it dropped? That's how I felt that whole time. Not even understand the trauma I'm sending to my child. But I felt like that the entire day. Just my stomach dropping. And somebody said, you had tried enough. You had did enough to earn the right to take your baby home. I had to earn that. So survival is not the right response to that, right? And I say over the years, I've always talked to people about, you know, people tell you, why don't you pull your bootstraps up? If you ain't got no job, why you don't have a job? If you ain't been to school, why you ain't been to school? Pull your bootstraps up. And I always would say, please give me some shoestring. If you give me some shoestring, boy, I can run. Oh, you don't even know I'm Jesse Owens. And it's exactly what I did when I got it. Next slide, please. Just some of the work that I've learned in my years working with LCFS. You know, I continue to want to be a part. I mean, I'm addicted to LCFS, as you can see. Now I'm on the board. I was a client. Now I want to be on the board. I'm not going to take your job, Mike, but what I'm saying is a great job. Great job. I'm addicted to these people because they always helping me, right? But over the years, I've learned in my interactions why it's so important to have that lived experience, that community voice at the table. How best would you know how the program works if you don't hear from people like me? I reflect what is possible given the right tools, given the shoestrings to tie. But you only know that when you get an opportunity to share that out with the people that matter. Next slide. And y'all have an opportunity to keep this with you. Oh, then I got real big headed once I got my kids back and started going to college and stuff. I started working with the pediatricians. I was like, yeah, y'all help me, I'm gonna help y'all too. I like to say you start stomping with the big dogs. They be like, oh, Dr. Tamela Milan-Alexander. I was like, oh my God, did you call me doctor? What? Like, they just don't know I was 80 pounds dripping wet off heroin and cocaine a decade ago. You know how good that made me feel that I was referred to like that? Because they saw me differently. Because of the crowd I kept. Next slide. Just remember, it was my experience. You can't tell me nothing about this. This me. I show up as me everywhere I go. Everywhere I go. I don't need to be something else for anyone. I show up as Tamela Milan-Alexander because I love not having to shelter myself anymore from anyone. You can either live in your shame or you can let shame kill you. And I'm no longer ashamed of where I've been or where I come from. I'm no longer worried about how people look at me. What you see is what you get. My experiences have been vast, but they are mine. And nobody should treat you any type of way. because of what you've been through. And that's the part of the system. That's the part about family we need to change. You on drugs, you struggling. Nobody should see you any differently than you a child of God, a human being who is deserving of every muster of empathy that you have. Next slide, please. This is Chicken, my first grandbaby. I'd like to talk about Chicken because it was her mother who I was dragged underneath the car with. And today, when she comes to my house and play, so, I had got off the drugs, I had moved out the projects, and then about 5 years ago, after being on the Section 8 program for 21 years, I bought my first home, my very first home. Thank you. And it's amazing to think about all the things I would have missed out on if I'd died out there in them streets. If my baby would have been removed from me in that hospital and I wasn't given a chance. I think about everything I would have lost. And I revere everything I've gained. Like they play in my yard, they be like, Grandma Tammy. It's so precious to hear those words. I never thought that I would. Never thought it would be my normal. I thought I would never. I can vividly remember looking at the 14th floor of 141 North Walcott and remembering how hopeless I felt, how deep a need for a connection I needed to have, and how important it was that my case manager gave me that connection. And she's one of the reasons why I keep doing what I need to do. There's 1,000 chickens out there on the west and the south sides and downstate and rural communities. And what's crazy is that the inequities don't just stop at our borders. They are nationwide. So I choose to be a part of the solution. I had been a part of the problem. I had ran up and down the streets to the dope man, giving him all the money. Now I want to help build solutions, build opportunities so families that need your help can succeed. Let's start walking beside our folks. I don't need you to lead me. I want to walk beside you. Next slide. So I want to talk about flipping the switch. One of the things, that's it right there. Yeah, go back. We gonna get to my proudest moments now. Okay. Okay. But in the interest of time, we'll stay at flipping the switch. So one of the ways that I want to share with you guys today is how can you build that mechanism into the families that you're serving, whatever market, venue, any part of the social determinative health timeline that you're on. Ways that you can flip the switch are inclusion and training. One of the things I do with the Family Partnership Network nationally is we go around, we talk about how do you include families? Families are advisors. They're not just patients, they're not just consumers, they're advisors. And we should be treated as such when we're asked about how can you do something better? You gotta have lived experience in there. And one way to do that is to be inclusive. To start at the beginning, not in the middle, not after all the brain. Everybody smile. Everybody did their years. And I have a master's degree and I still show up as Tammy. Tamela is my government name. But Tammy still show up, right? And so I'm just gonna share with you the first step to the inclusion of families is to stop excluding them from the process. Ask people to show up now. Ask them about the things they have to navigate now so that they can make a difference on how we move forward. Have more empathy. People, I used to think people would see me and I would say, I need Pampers, and they say, ooh, but your hair comb. Should I look like should I come in here stretched out on the, like, should I be? Why you got to be the poorest of the poor to get some help? You should look distraught to get some help. It's so unfair and so unrelenting for families who need support. And I want to be better at connecting folks. That's why I continue to stay in this field. This is my passion work. It's because somebody did it for me. I want to do it for others. And that's what we got to continue to hang on to. Be more empathetic, be more inclusive, and training. I could have came to LCFS Board of Directors like a deer caught my headlights. So what y'all talking about? But see, the thing is, I have been exposed. I've had many opportunities to sit at board meetings, and I show up as I should because it's important to be authentic. It's understandable sometimes to have to learn, but we have to train people to show up as themselves. And so I've always been good about that. I've always asked the right questions. I may not know all the questions to ask, but I guarantee I'm not leaving the room not knowing something. And that's what I try to do in everything I do. Next slide. So, what are my seeds to drop with you wonderful folks today? It's my Keep Families Together notes. Take time to peel back the onion and learn the needs of the participants in your programs. Think about their community and their support system. I lived in the projects. Where was I going to? Do you think it's a child care provider within the neighborhood so I could go get that job? That wasn't happening. Did you think I could go get a 6-week checkup easily? And they shot every day on Walcott and Washington. Ask people about, how did you get here today? Stop looking at what someone is not doing and instead acknowledge what they are doing. I told you, they said I did not want my kids back. That was furthest from the truth. I want my kids back, but you got to make sure I got stable housing. I'm just not gonna leave at my little housing project. This was a safe space. I know who the killers are. I know who doing the shooting. I'm good. I'm gonna stay right here. If you give me stable housing, I go wherever you want me to go. And that's the difference. You can't just sell me a dream. We gotta make sure some things are possible. Yes, I want my kids back, but I also don't want to go nowhere and not be able to take care of my kids. So it's important that I had that Section 8 voucher when I left out the projects. Allow yourself to become a true advocate. Sometimes people are hard to deal with. I think my LCFS worker probably changed careers after me. I just know I was something else. You just don't run into me every day. Don't put up boundaries and create barriers to connecting. Some of us are so, I've never seen this before, or I've never heard that before. I've never been through that before. Well, I have. But don't make that a barrier to communicating and connecting with people. It's so much more important to connect with people where they are, instead of trying to make people go on a pedestal that you enforce. Meet people where they at, they'll get there. Listen with your heart, not with your mind, through mercy and grace. And then before you leave here today, pledge today to work with your participants, not just for them, and take encounters out of your narrative. You got to see so many people this week. You got to do so many things. Just connect with one person. You can change your life. That one person that walked in that room changed my life. It didn't take much. It just took somebody cared enough to show up for me. Next slide. You know, one of the things I like to share about too is some people, and I've done a lot of podcasts and respectful care articles. But I want to leave you with this because sometimes something as little as a pot of pan can make a difference. And I was sharing with this national group, right? Well, maybe you can't give money because of how your infrastructure is set up, right? You know, some people like, you got donations? Well, I know y'all ain't gonna give me no money. You think I'm gonna use it on drugs? That's okay. But when I was in the projects, I had one pot. I had one pot. I was so happy when somebody realized I needed some utensils. Can I get I ain't fried no chicken in so long. I need a frying pan. Can I get a couple of extra forks and spoons in there? Those would be helpful. But instead of asking for a seat, I had to start off by pulling up a folding chair. Now I got a sturdy chair. It don't fold no more. That's what success looks like to me today. Next slide. I told you once before, I wondered often how she would turn out. I was sexy then, y'all. I was thin. Next slide. And while I have many titles, and I can walk through each and every one of them, the proudest title I have today is I am who I am. Next slide. That sixth child that introduced me to this program and this great work graduated from high school. Y'all can clap for that. That's my little house. Oh, I love it so much. I'm gardening and everything. My wall's not concrete. And then I married my husband, who married me with 6 kids. That in itself is a feat, right? Proudest moments, proudest moments. Next slide. I'll wrap up by saying this. Every opportunity that I get to talk about the life that I have led, the opportunities that I have had, the children who keep calling me every day about how to boil water and how they bill so high, I don't know. But there are opportunities that would have never been there if it wasn't for the forces and the mercy and grace of God, who brought so many things together to make it possible for someone like me to be in front of all of you. So I leave you with this. Let's help ordinary people do extraordinary things. Thank you so much.